We all have that one friend that's just naturally gifted at board games. You try and try, but they're always just one step ahead of you. They're just built different. For me, that friend's Eric, and I've decided it's time to get some revenge. His board game of choice is Ark Nova, an extremely popular and complex zoo-building board game taking the world by storm. He's beaten me at Ark Nova 6 times, and a lot of the games haven't even been close. So I think it's time to get some sweet retribution. I'm going to train like a madman so I can finally get my first Ark Nova win against Eric. And to spice up the challenge even more, if I lose after all of my practice and preparation, I will contribute $100 of my own money to the Dune Imperium tournament going on right now. Let's get to work. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ark Nova, don't worry. You'll be able to understand what's going on in the video without an in-depth rules explanation. Just know that the overall goal of Ark Nova is to design and build a scientifically managed zoo. Playing animal cards will reward appeal and move you along this track. Supporting conservation projects increases your conservation points and moves you along this track. Once you increase your conservation points and your appeal enough for the two markers to pass each other, the game will end and the person who crossed by the most wins the game. That doesn't sound too complicated. Surely I should have been able to beat Eric through luck of the draw, right? Nope. Despite the cute zoo theme, this game has incredible depth and a very high skill ceiling. And the beautiful complexity of this game lies in these 5 simple cards. Each of them represents an action you can take. So realistically, you only have 5 different things you can do on any given turn. But each of these cards is associated with a different strength value, and whenever you play one, it resets back down to the lowest position, neutering the strength of that card until you play enough of the other cards to move it back up. And herein lies one of the core struggles of the game, because in a perfect world, you'd play every card once it gets to 5 strength so that you can maximize the value out of every turn. However, the ever-changing variables of the cards in your hand, your zoo board, the display board, the available worker actions, this game assails you with possibilities that will force you to make tough decisions and play cards out of order if you truly want to maximize every turn. In that way, the game isn't that hard to learn, but it is incredibly difficult to master. If a top-tier player played against a mid-level opponent 100 times, I honestly think they'd win like 95 of the games. You'd think there'd be more variance because both players are drawing from a shuffled deck of over 250 different cards, but the tiered action system and the requirement to adapt strategies to an ever-changing selection of cards skyrockets this game into another level of complexity. A level of complexity that I clearly wasn't able to adapt to on my own. And unfortunately, there wasn't much in the way of Ark Nova strategy guides to help me study up. So if I want to beat Eric, I'm going to have to figure out how to get better at this daunting beast of a game. So I went straight to the heart of the Ark Nova competitive community and I started playing games against some of the greatest players out there, most of them with hundreds of games played. And can you guess what happened to me? I got destroyed. I was the little kid on the playground that wandered too far into the big boys territory and I got my face shoved into the mud. Game after game, I was taking beatings way worse than the ones Eric had dished out. Sure, I was improving, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel like I was improving fast enough. Not only did I want to beat my friend Eric to regain some lost pride, but I'm also entering the World Series of Board Gaming this year, and Ark Nova is one of the 16 games I need to master before the tournament starts. Speaking of which, if you plan on competing in the World Series of Board Gaming, use my discount code ORSKI at checkout and save yourself $40 on the Stay and Play and Quadruple Ring event packages. So I'm on a bit of a time crunch here. I can't just keep running into a brick wall until I figure out how to beat players with hundreds of hours of experience on me. I need backup. I sent out a plea to the community's top players to see if any of them would answer the call and teach me Ark Nova strategy. Fortunately for me, 3 players answered that call. Darsomal, J-Dog, and Zybus. Darsomal and J-Dog are absolute Ark Nova legends. They've chewed up this game so much that they've recognized every minor game imbalance and fixed it themselves. They even developed their own balanced version of the game complete with custom cards, rebalanced maps, and even changes to some of the core aspects of the game. I'd clearly come to the right place to master this game. Fortunately for me, they wanted to do their teaching session together. They ended up sitting down with me and teaching me strategy for over 3 hours.
In general, monkeys are kind of and the sponsor cards for monkeys are bad. This is like the only good monkey, pretty much. So we removed it as well because it's too good.
Also, you may notice that causing last break gives 2 shield up in the game. The reason why we do this is because sometimes there's like a problem where people just don't want to cause a break, and it's better for people to just do nothing to not cause the break. Because what you're doing is that you're effectively giving another player an extra turn.
Yeah, like usually whoever causes the last break usually gets 1 less turn than everyone else. It's like a really bad causing last break. So we had an instant event to that. I know a lot of new players are complaining about there's a little interaction in Ark Nova, and I think that's not very true, because it's like all about what your opponents are doing and where the break track is and when the break is going to happen, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of interaction.
There was so much high value advice packed into the session that I ended up rewatching the recording several times and taking notes to ensure I didn't miss anything. And after that, I was off to the races. It was like learning how to run after only being able to crawl. Suddenly, I was a real competitive threat in the online games I was playing. I was able to map out turn sequences so much easier, and I had a better understanding of the different broken strategies this game has to offer. My teaching session with Zybus wasn't for another couple of weeks, so I was determined to train as much as possible in preparation for our meeting. The days came and went, and I continued to win a higher and higher percentage of the games I played. And finally, my training day with Zybus had arrived. Another Ark Nova grinder. I was excited not only to learn what Zybus had to teach, but I was also hoping to get in a bit of a sparring game. You know, test the skills I'd been practicing for the last several weeks.
I think sponsors are like secretly one of the strongest card types. Maybe not even secretly, but like if you have the right couple of sponsors, you can just completely change how you play the game. I think like sponsors can be just crazy crucial. So what most people tend to say is these are the 3 that you want to always upgrade. And then you upgrade one of these depending on what's in your hand and what your zoo board is and all that sort of stuff.
And after that teaching session with Zybus, we fired up a game of Ark Nova so I could truly test my skills, and it was an incredibly hard-fought game. Zybus was one of the fiercest competitors that I had gone up against, but I was able to get an early lead on the conservation track and collect the bonuses much faster than him, allowing me to snowball my momentum into a powerful endgame. Zybus actually ended up being able to catch up pretty effectively at the end, but it just wasn't quite enough.
All right, so final score. Very close.
Yeah, I think I'm at 18.
Oh, no, wait, what am I doing? That's 12. Yep, good job. Nice.
Hey, good game.
Yeah.
And with that victory against one of my teachers, I knew I was ready to finally take on my white whale. Eric, I'm coming for you, buddy. So Eric had no idea that I had a YouTube channel or that I was practicing Ark Nova, so I had a bit of explaining to do before the game started. And let's just say Eric wasn't super happy with me. I got 3 people from the Ark Nova community to coach me on the strategies and everything, and I've been playing a ton of practice games.
You realize you're going to crush me, though.
That's the hope.
The last time I played Ark Nova was September 1st.
Well, that's good. That's good for my chances then.
That's what I mean. You're going to crush me. Like, I'm just going to look like a doofus.
Well, if you look at our stats, and this actually works out because you have them, I'm pretty sure I've never beaten you at this game.
Correct, yeah. So I pulled up our plays, and I think I'm 6-0 versus you.
There you go. So I did find somebody that's better than me. Needless to say, with $100 on the line and the embarrassment of losing after months of intense training, I was incredibly nervous for this duel. So to start off every game of Ark Nova, you have to choose between 2 different maps. And what I ended up drawing was the map with the lake with a lot of money around it, and one of the expansion maps that has all these colors and rules that I don't really know because they're not going to have the expansion maps at the World Series of Board Gaming, so I ended up going with the lake map. And the lake map's actually very good. It gives you a ton of early money to work with. And the truly insane thing about this map is, if you look at this icon right here, this icon means you get an extra action. Extra actions are huge in this game, so getting one by default on the map is truly powerful. Eric ended up going with this map, which is also probably an S tier map just because you can get a university by building way over to this spot. And of course, the map condition of allowing you to ignore conditions to play different animals is also pretty good if you can get to it. So 2 very powerful maps going at it this game. Another thing that happens at the start of an Ark Nova game is the drawing of 2 final scoring cards. These cards will reward you conservation points if you're able to meet the requirements by the end of the game. So for example, I drew large animal zoo and small animal zoo. In large animal zoo, for every single animal I have that takes up a size 4 enclosure or greater, I get conservation points. So as you can see, if I have 2 large animals, I get 2 conservation points, 4 large animals, 3 conservation points, and if I can manage 5 large animals, I get 4 conservation points. So these are goals I'm going to keep in the back of my mind as I play. About halfway through the game, you do have to discard one of these, but hopefully we'll have our strategy in mind by that point. The last important thing to keep in mind in the beginning of the game is the starting conservation projects. These are shared projects that anyone can participate in, and you can claim them when you meet the requirement. For example, for the Europe Conservation Project, if you have 2 Europe icons in your zoo, that means you can take a level 5 association action, put your worker up here, and then claim the level 2 Europe Conservation Project, gaining the 2 conservation points, which move you along this track as I said earlier. If you want to play effectively in Ark Nova, it's super important to pay attention to these starting conservation projects and plan around getting them as early as you can. These were actually the starting conservation projects I got in my game with Eric, so I was planning on going heavy into the Europe icons, and then also grabbing species diversity because it's generally a pretty easy conservation project to get. The last part of the setup includes both players drawing up to 8 cards and then discarding down to 4. And these are the starting 8 cards that we got. Given that Europe is one of these starting standard projects, I'm pretty highly incentivized to go after my European icons here, so the greater flamingo and the red deer are probably going to be keeps. Additionally, looking through my other options, the monkey is all right, but it does require 2 Africa icons, which will probably take a while to get to. Same with the snowy owl that requires 2 bird icons, so those will probably go. Reptile breeding program is excellent. All it requires is a reptile and a partner zoo, which is pretty doable early on in the game, and getting those 2 conservation points is huge because completing a conservation project early gives you access to an early card upgrade, which makes one of your basic actions a bit stronger. So we'll probably be keeping reptile breeding program and hoping that we can find a reptile in the opening row, which leaves me with with one spot left, and I'm really tempted to take one of these sponsors here. Guided School Tours versus Engineer. Engineer I do like. It lets you play doubles of the same building, which can be pretty good if you're trying to get down some early kiosks or pavilions, and it gives some tickets at the end if you're able to cover up your map. But I really like Guided School Tours. It gives a conservation point and a ticket, and can give you an extra conservation point at the end if you have 5 different animal icons in your zoo. Given that species diversity is one of the conservation projects here, I'm already incentivized to get a bunch of different animal icons, so this card will likely end up being 2 conservation points just for a 3 sponsors action. That's pretty good value. So my final hand is going to be Greater Flamingo, Guided School Tours, Red Deer, and Red Tail Breeding Program. So to start off round 1, we ended up getting down Guided School Tours pretty early, getting us that conservation point and that appeal that we wanted. Eric played an association action to grab the Partnership Zoo with Asia, which not only gives you an Asia icon in your zoo, but discounts all future cards that have Asia icons by 3. We're going for a European strategy, and we have cards with European icons, so it makes a lot of sense for us to go for the European Partner Zoo, so we can get a 3 discount on both of those European icons. As for notables for the rest of the round, Eric ended up building 3 times, putting down a couple of different enclosures, and of course you need enclosures so that you can play animals into those enclosures. And the last major thing he did was play a sponsor card. He ended up playing Native Lizards, which, since he doesn't have any connected rock spaces, won't do anything for him now, but maybe he'll get some endgame points out of it later. So overall, not the most impactful opening round, but it's still early in the game. As for the rest of our round, we end up snapping European Bison from the row, which is amazing because it has 2 European icons, that plus our other 2 European animals, and our European Partner Zoo. That gives us a grand total of 5 European icons, which can give us a ton of conservation points later. With the rest of the round, we end up building twice. We built a 5 enclosure and a 3 enclosure, and using that 3 size enclosure, we are able to play our Flamingo, which gives us 7 appeal, and lets us get a kiosk or pavilion for free. Kiosk gives you passive income every round, and a pavilion would give you 1 appeal if you played it. So I end up opting for the kiosk here to get some extra income going forward. So after round 1, we were off to a very early lead, beating Eric on the appeal track and on the conservation track. But of course, these aren't huge leads, so we're going to have to keep working if we want to press our advantage here. We start out round 2 by playing our European Bison, which gives us all sponsor cards from the display and gives us 6 appeal, further cementing our lead on the appeal track. Important, because the farther along the appeal track you get, the more money you get every round. But this is where Eric starts to wake up a little bit, because he responds with an absolutely brutal play. He plays 2 animals this round. The first one is Ring-tailed Lemur, letting him get a little bit of money back and granting 6 appeal, helping him catch up on that appeal deficit. And then he plays the Sun Bear, which lets you take an association after this one. And I already talked about how powerful it is to get extra actions on your turn. The Sun Bear letting him get an extra association action on top of this play is just crazy. So he gets 5 appeal from the Sun Bear, catching him up pretty quickly, but then he's able to play a level 5 association action, claiming 3 conservation points on species diversity and passing us on the conservation track. Absolutely brutal. But Eric's not the only one that can make brutal plays. I end up playing my Red Deer, giving me 5 appeal and my 5th European icon. After that, the sequence I've been planning out for the last few rounds finally pays off. I play a level 5 association action, and I take the highest tier of the European Conservation Project, giving me 5 conservation points. 5 conservation points in round 2 of Ark Nova is so incredibly good. It lets me handily pass Eric on the conservation track and gives me a free Partner Zoo, which is insane value. With the rest of his turn, Eric ends up playing Horsefield's Tarsier, which gives 3 appeal and 2 reputation, and a little bit of money back. So he moves 3 positions along the appeal track. And to finish out his round, he ends up playing another association action and getting down the Predator Breeding Program that requires 1 Predator and their Partner Zoo, giving 2 more conservation points and 2 more reputation. Absolutely insane. Nothing too crazy happened for the rest of our round, unless you count getting one of the best cards in the game. We pick up the African Elephant, which not only gives a ton of appeal, but also gives you access to an additional final scoring card, which can give a ton of conservation points at the end of the game. We will be going out of our way to play this. And now we're in the 3rd round. Eric ends up playing Great Hornbill, which lets them either increase or decrease the strength of their build action, as well as get 6 appeal, tying us up on the appeal track. This game is neck and neck. But don't worry how close the score is, because I have one of the sickest cards in the deck. Now to unleash the beast.
Oh no.
I'll play my giant African elephant.
Jesus. The 2 final scoring cards is just insane.
So not only does the African bush elephant give me 10 appeal, but it also lets me draw 2 final scoring cards and keep 1. And these final scoring cards can give you a ton of extra points. I ended up drawing Favorite Zoo and Research Zoo. Since I only have 1 research icon in my deck, Research Zoo is kind of out because I'm already pretty far along on the reputation track. On Eric's next turn, he ends up grabbing a university, which gives him his last worker, and his last worker gives 2 conservation points, so he moves ahead of me on the conservation track, and he donated some money as well so he could get 1 more conservation point, putting him in the lead on the conservation track. So the final score at the end of this round results in Eric being ahead on the conservation track, but we're still ahead on the appeal track, so it's close, but we're still in the lead overall. To start out the next round, Eric played an association action to grab another university. I didn't explain what these little cap symbols do, but basically every time you get one, it moves you along the reputation track, which can just give some bonus rewards as you play along. In this case, he ended up passing by this 1 conservation point, so he moves 1 more conservation point ahead of us. And now that one of us has reached 10 conservation points, we have to decide which one of our final scoring cards we want to keep. In this case, since we already have a decent number of large animals, we're going to keep our large animal zoo. With the rest of his turn, he also decided to donate 10 money in order to gain 1 more conservation point, further widening his lead on the conservation track. And later in the round, we ended up playing an animals action to get down 2 of our smaller animals, the Chinese water dragon, which will give us 3 appeal, as well as the Tasmanian devil, which will give us 4 appeal and 1 reputation. And just remember, that reputation is very important because we have a final scoring card tied into reputation in our zoo. Now, if you know much about Ark Nova, you're probably thinking, I've got a pretty sizable lead here. It's going to be pretty difficult for Eric to come back, even though he's ahead on the conservation track. And let's just say Eric has a plan, and he is about to start unraveling me. Eric just starts pounding down different animal cards. Starts out with a rock monitor, then he moves on to the veiled chameleon, narrowing his deficit a little bit before the end of the round. But then early in the next round, he plays the Barbary macaque, stealing some of my much needed money. And then the crazy bastard drops a saltwater crocodile, getting even more appeal. And just like that, any kind of lead I had is evaporated. I'm really gonna have to get to work if I want to catch up. But don't worry, I've been building up some plans of my own. I've been holding on to this white rhinoceros for a while. Not only is he big enough to help me out with my final scoring card, but he also gives me a base conservation project to add to my hand. And these cards are very powerful. So not only does it put me back in the lead on the appeal track, but it also gives me a conservation project I can play. And I choose to pick up herbivores since I have so many herbivore icons in my zoo, and Eric doesn't have any, so maximum benefit for me without helping Eric at all. And Eric punctuates his crazy animal play by playing an association action at level 5, letting him do another conservation project, and this one lets him release one of his animals with an Australian icon into the wild. He just played this 5-size crocodile, which he decides to release, so he's going to get a whopping 5 conservation points. The upside for me, though, is whenever you release an animal, you have to give back the appeal that it gave your zoo, so he's going to drop back on the appeal track, but that conservation track lead is very frightening. We continue to play out the game. I ended up getting down the herbivores conservation project at level 4, giving me 4 conservation points. Eric ended up releasing one of his predators, in this case the sun bear, giving himself 3 conservation points, and then we continued on playing animals. Eric played a couple animals, I played a couple animals. We continued to accrue conservation points, and eventually the score was pretty much even. But unfortunately, Eric had to make a lot of long-term sacrifices in order to keep the appeal track so close. He just had to spam out as many small animals as he could just to try and catch up to me. But whereas he was trying to spam out these small animals, I have been saving up my money and my resources to get one monster play off. And let's just say Eric's about to be a little disappointed. Do you hear that? I think something's coming. You thought I just had one elephant?
Oh no. Oh no.
Play this guy.
Jesus. You're playing both elephants? Oh god. No.
Yes, Eric, I am playing both elephants. And the Asian elephant not only gives me 8 appeal and 1 conservation point, skyrocketing me ahead of Eric on the tracks, but it again gives me 2 more final scoring cards, of which I get to keep 1, and I draw Conservation Zoo and Research Zoo. Considering that I have 3 research icons and I've supported 3 conservation projects throughout the game, it doesn't really matter which one of these I take, so I just end up picking Conservation Zoo for the 1 extra conservation point at the end of the game. And with the rest of that turn, I end up playing the Shoe Bill, which gives me 1 conservation point and 3 appeal, giving me just what I need in order to cross my tokens over. And remember, as soon as someone's conservation point token and their appeal token cross each other, that signals the end of the game. So Eric has 1 turn left to catch up, or he loses our match. And with Eric's final play of the game, playing the Geological Conservation Project, giving him 2 more conservation points right at the end. And after adding up all of the endgame conservation points, the final score came down to 25 for me and 10 for Eric. It feels so good to get my first win, and I really appreciate Eric for playing, even though he hadn't played in quite a long time before our match. But wait, although the main point of this video was to get my first win against Eric in Ark Nova, an even bigger reason I chose this game is because I'm preparing for the World Series of Board Gaming, and I'm proud to announce the launch of Team Orski. If you join the Discord, link in the description, you can come to discuss strategy or play practice games of the 16 different board games hosted at the World Series of Board Gaming. If you plan on competing, or if you just want to help me and others train for the tournament, please join the Discord. We're going to need all the help we can get. Thanks for watching.